Hello students, today I am going to discuss the chapter Communication Psych. So let us understand what is communication. So communication is the process of transferring or sharing information between two or more people. It is a two-way process of reaching mutual understanding. It is the basic need to interact with others. Communication is the foundation of all human relationships. We communicate every day with our family, teachers, friends, etc. So, we come across what is communication. So, communication is the process of transferring information or sharing information with multiple people. Now, communication cycle means when the message conveyed by the speaker reaches the other person and it is interpreted same as it is said, then we will call it a communication cycle. Now, features of an effective communication. Let us understand what is a meaningful communication. A meaningful communication results in a response from the receiver. So, if the receiver is not responding to your communication, that means your communication is not effective. If you are passing some message and the other person is not taking it properly, the way you like him to take, then it won't be considered as an effective communication. So in these points, we are going to discuss what are some of the factors that is responsible for the effective communication. Now, the first factor is common language. Common language. So let us understand. Communication is meaningful process that involves a sender and a receiver. While communicating, one should share a mutually accepted code that is common language. That means if you are communicating with the person, your language and the receiver's language must be same. Otherwise, receiver is not going to understand properly and you won't be able to convince him properly. So, like if the person is talking to you, if the person is comfortable, if you are comfortable in English and the listener is comfortable in English, then it will be better to communicate in English. Now, if you are comfortable in Hindi and the other person is also comfortable in Hindi, then your communication must be in Hindi. But if you are talking in English and the receiver is responding it in Hindi, what does it mean? It means that the receiver is more comfortable in Hindi. So you have to talk to him in Hindi. You have to change your language. Now, the second point is message should be clear. Message should be clear to you as well as for the receiver. Now, if the message is not clear, then you won't be able to deliver it properly. If you yourself is confused, if you yourself is not clear with the message, how would you explain it to the other person? So you will be beating around the bushes, you will be taking long times, and this way your communication won't be effective. So before you are going to pass your information, make it sure that the communication is clear. The message is clear. If the message is not clear, then your communication will not be effective. Now, the third point is listening to others. Listening to others is also very important. All the time you are talking in the communication and the other person is listening. And if you are not giving time to the other person to listen, then it will be a great problem for him. He will get bored. There will be no interaction. So communication is a two-way process. So your communication is not verbally, if you are not talking to orally or not in a telephonic conversation, if you are communicating with the instant messaging like WhatsApp and all, so once you pass the message, wait for some time, let the other person respond, and then you have to respond. This way your communication will be effective. Now, these were some of the points that were to be discussed for effective communication. So what are the So in this slide, we are going to discuss impact of an effective communication. What happens if you follow the features of effective communication? The first thing is that it encourages in active participation. The first benefit you are going to get is it encourages in active communication. That means you will be an active communicator in group discussion or in teamwork, or people will take your advices. Now, the second point is it helps in building relationship with others. You must also you must always keep in mind that a relationship, a human relationship, is based on the way you communicate. On the way you communicate. If you are a good communicator, if you are able to present yourself, if you are able to present your emotions properly, then everybody is going to accept it, understand it. Most of the students, most of the teenagers, they used to complain that nobody is listening them, nobody is thinking about their point of view. Why? Because you are unable to present yourself properly. Now, the third point is it enables leaders to cultivate a sense of common goal among the ability to communicate. Ability to communicate effectively builds your confidence. Now, this is also very important point. If you are a good communicator, you are going to build up your confidence level, because when you are a good communicator, you will be able to convince the other person. When you are able to convince the other person, your confidence level will be built up. You will become more confident. Now, effective communication helps in handling various conflicts and misunderstanding. Very important. Misunderstanding, conflicts, fights, quarrels, all these things can be tackled effectively if you are a good communicator. If you know how to pass on your messages, there is a less chances of misunderstanding, conflicts. If your message is clear enough, then there will be no conflicts, there will be no misunderstanding. So an effective communication reduces the chances of conflicts and misunderstanding. Now, the next point is it saves and reduces stress. It saves times and reduces stress. So if you are able to handle the situation properly, definitely you are going to save your time. And if you are saving your time, then you will have lots of time and there will be less stress also. Because if you are unable to present your message to the other person, or the other person has misunderstood you, then definitely that is going to build a stress for you. Am I right? They are going to build this stress for you. So if you are able to communicate properly, there will be no conflict and there will be no misunderstanding. So when there is no conflicts and no misunderstanding, then definitely you are going to save your time and you are going to reduce the stress also. The next point is it fosters success in personal and professional life. If you go through the biography of a successful person, you will find that these persons were successful because they were a good communicator also. Let's take an example of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a very poor boy, but he was a very good orator. He could influence a crowd with his speech, with his voice. So though he was not very influensive in the early age, due to his communication skill, due to his communication skill, he was able to gain success, and finally he became the chancellor of Germany. So effective communication is very necessary in the success of personal as well as professional life. So let's see what's there in the next slide. in this slide, we are going to discuss about elements of communication cycle. So basically, there are 5 types of elements involved in the communication cycle. The first one is the sender. Sender is the person or the individual or groups who has the idea or the information that he wants to communicate with the person, with the other person or with the group of person. Now after that comes encoding. Translation of an idea into a message by the source is called encoding. So you have got the idea, and when this idea is being written, it has been translated into a message, then this process is known as encoding. The message can be encoded in any combination of mutually understood words, signs or symbols. Now the third point comes, the third elements comes receiver. The person or the group that receives the message is known as receiver. The person or group that receives the message is known as receiver. Now the fourth element comes decoding. This is very important. Decoding. It is the process of deriving meaning from the received message. If the message is encoded while keeping the receiver in mind, it will be easier to decode it. Now decoding, the receiver has got the message. Now how the receiver is decoding it, what the receiver has understood it, this process is known as decoding. Now if the message is written by keeping in mind about the receiver, then it will be easier for the receiver to decode it. Now finally, the last elements without which the communication cycle won't be completed is the feedback. The cycle of communication is complete when the sender receives the feedback from the receiver. Without feedback, the sender cannot confirm if the receiver has interpreted the messages correctly. Now, finally, when the message is reached, the sender has got the idea, he has encoded it, then it has been sent to the receiver has decoded it, and after understanding all the information, the receiver has to give the feedback, confirm it, that whether we agree or disagree. This is known as, so our communication cycle consists of basically 5 elements, and they are sender, encoding, receiver, decoding and feedback. So coming to the topic, barriers of communication, or we can say communication barrier. A barrier to effective communication is any factor, individual, situational or environmental, that prevents the receiver from receiving and understanding the message accurately. Now, environmental barriers. So there are 3 types of barriers. They may be environmental barriers, situational barriers and individual barriers. Environmental barriers, these are the physical condition that affects the communication process. For example, defective instrument, uncomfortable sitting arrangement, unhygienic room conditions distract listeners. So this is environmental barriers. Another comes situational barriers. Situation barriers due to situations, like the factors like noise, distraction cause unnecessary disruptions in the communication process. For example, loud music and noise from generators or other machineries. So this is the second barrier of effective communication. Now the third one comes individual barriers. Now these individual barriers is further classified into 4 different types that are attitudinal, attitude, that means linguistic ability, inattention and emotional states. Let us understand attitudinal barriers. Factors like age, gender, lack of interest, discomfort with the topic, culture, and socio-economic or professional status define how a listener perceives and interprets the message. Now, the second one is linguistic ability. Speech disorders or other physical disabilities can distort the communication process. Additionally, the lack of proficiency in the language affects the interruptions of the message as well. The third point is inattention. If the listener is preoccupied or distracted or just not interested in the conversation, he will likely be not attentive. It may result in an adverse effect on the outcome of the communication. Now, the final states of individual barriers is emotional states. Emotions of the sender at the time of encoding may result in the usage of wrong words or tone that may mislead to miscommunication. Likewise, the receiver may misinterpret the message due to his emotion. In the last slide, I'm just giving you the summary of the lesson. So just go through it and if possible, note it down also. These are the important points from this chapter.